We're ready.
No gavel, so I'll use my knuckles. I will call to order the Wednesday, December 20th, 2023 meeting of the Oregon City Urban Renewal Commission. Call a roll, please.
Commissioner Denise McGriff is entering the room.
Here.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell is excused today. Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Doug Neely. Commissioner Adam Marl.
Here.
Vice Chair Sean Cross.
Here.
And Chair Mike Mitchell.
Here. Okay, do we have any citizen comments? No citizen comments? All right, we'll move on to item number 1, disposition of commercial lease with Clackamas Landscape Supply Incorporated. Is that Mr. Conkle or Mr. Graham?
I will do it.
Okay. All right.
The lease that you, first of all, good evening and happy holiday to everyone here, and I wish it the best of the new year for all of you. The lease that you have before you has changed. And the reason it has changed, and is that this is a fairly recent change due to fairly recent events. The tenant is facing some very challenging health issues. And he has asked that we revise the lease to reflect his need to focus on his health right now. And so what you're looking at is a one-term lease that will end in December 31st, 2024. He has agreed to provide you a 6-month advance notice. If he decides, if things change, he'll most likely come before the body and ask for an extension beyond 2024. But as it stands now, he's simply asking for this lease to be a 1-year term ending in 2024 of December 31st. And that's the extent of this situation.
So the document on the dais before you reflects the changes from the original document, which was essentially a 2-year extended out to 2025 with the ability of the Urban Renewal Commission to provide a 12-month termination during that time period. That's been replaced in just, as Mr. Graham indicated, essentially this is a 1-year lease with our long-term tenant there.
And just so I understand, 6 months in, he'll reach out if he's interested in extending beyond the end of 2024.
Correct, and we, Mr. Graham made it clear that, you know, if that were to happen, if in May, Mr. Pearson came forward, said, hey, you know, things have changed, I'd like to look at extending this for through the year of 2025. We did make it clear that, you know, that's at the sole discretion of the Urban Renewal Commission to make that decision.
Any questions for staff?
No, I thought it was very self-explanatory.
Okay. Any comments? Okay, anybody have a motion?
I'd like to move that we accept the lease terms as submitted by staff.
Second. Okay, moved and second. Call the vote, please.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Doug Neely. Commissioner Adam Marl.
Aye.
Vice Chair Sean Cross.
Yes.
And Chair Mike Mitchell.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Moving right along, item number 2, Stimson Property Phase 1 Environmental Assessment Final Report. Mr. Conkle.
Thank you. And I'm going to invite up Mr. Jin Park with WeWorks Environmental Works to help walk through the assessment. So as you may recall, the Urban Renewal Commission authorized a contract to look at the historical data and permits that had been that have occurred, as well as any findings related to the Stimson property. So as you may recall, this was one large property. It was partitioned, and there was no further action letter entered into or provided by the Department of Environmental Quality related to the construction of the Amtrak station and the parking lot that was there. Obviously, we've had a long-term leasee, which we just discussed on the remainder parcel that was created. So we did engage to really do a document research, permit research, and recommendations on how to move forward. So if there aren't any questions of me right now, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Park and can give a presentation. So please feel free to ask questions as we're going through this.
Hello, my name is Jin Park. I am an Oregon registered geologist and I work for Environmental Works. I have performed a Phase 1 Environmental Site Assessment, or ESA, for the subject property identified as 1799 Washington Street. In general, ESA identifies environmental conditions that may have impacted the subject property. Now we're looking at the location of the subject property depicted in the red dashed line. This is a close-up view of the subject property, again depicted in a red dashed line. The subject property was historically the northeast portion of the former Stimson lumber mill, and the subject property is now occupied by a company called Clackamas Landscape Supply. Some of the neighboring properties include the transfer station to the northeast, a former landfill to the east, a former oil facility to the southeast, the end of the Oregon Trail to the south, the Amtrak station to the southwest, which was also the southwest portion of the former Stimson lumber mill. The railroad track and Highway 205 is to the northwest. So here are the findings. There were many sites with environmental conditions identified at and near the subject property. The details of all of the identified sites and conditions are presented in the Phase 1 ESA report. The primary sites with environmental conditions include the former Stimson lumber mill, which includes the subject property and the Amtrak station, the former Rossman's landfill, the former Stein oil site, and other potential issues. Please note that a significant amount of environmental work has already been completed, and most of the significant environmental conditions have already been addressed to the satisfaction of the DEQ. For the lumber mill, they had spilled some wood treatment chemical called pentachlorophenol, or PCP, on the ground, which was capped and is being monitored. They had also spilled some petroleum products on the ground, which was removed. And they may have left some wood debris material buried in the ground. For the landfill, they have volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, heavy metals in the groundwater, which is being remediated and monitored. And they have methane in the soil gas, which is also being remediated and monitored. For the Stein oil site, they have 7 petroleum underground storage tanks that were all decommissioned. And the other potential issues may include a preferential migration pathway, which may need to be investigated, buried utilities, which may need to be removed or decommissioned, and a potential for flooding in the area. So here are the conclusions. For the subject property, the DEQ has given it a no further action needed designation. However, there may still be some buried wood debris material left. For the Amtrak station, the DEQ has given it a conditional no further action needed designation, and the PCP impacted soil is still being monitored. For the landfill, the DEQ has given it a permitted designation. Remediation systems are in place. The groundwater and soil gas is being monitored. For the Stein oil site, the DEQ has given it a closed or no further action needed designation. Furthermore, There is an Oregon city ordinance that prevents the use of groundwater in the local area. It is my opinion as an environmental geologist that the subject property appears to be ready for redevelopment. Note that engineering controls and/or institutional controls may be warranted in the design of the redevelopment to be protective of human health and the environment. And finally, here are my recommendations. Engage with the DEQ voluntary cleanup program. Work with the DEQ to evaluate current site conditions, which may include additional investigations. Work with the DEQ to develop a prospective purchasers agreement, or PPA, which would provide direction to ensure that any development on the subject property will be protective of human health and the environment. And finally, consider designs, engineering controls, and/or institutional controls that will be protective of human health and the environment. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Yes, the DEQ voluntary cleanup, what does the voluntary mean? I mean, that we simply want to have it done, or that DEQ is not requiring it?
The voluntary cleanup program is just the name of a department in the DEQ as an agency. The options that you have as far as evaluating environmental conditions on a property, you could do it independently, meaning that you could do it without their help, present the data, have them sign off on it, and move forward. With a voluntary cleanup program, you actually ask them for help.
Okay.
Submit a certain amount of money, and then they assign a project manager to kind of help you along the way. But that's the easiest way to get to the end point that both of us want, is the voluntary cleanup program. Yep.
It was a figure 4, I think, on our report here, but it's one that shows the surface water and where it's going to and so forth.
Yes, sir.
And I'm looking at it, and it appears that everything on the west side of the landfill and perhaps from the transfer station as well as the subject's property here goes into the cove. Is that right?
Yeah. So the area is really interesting because, the landfill is kind of up higher. A lot of the surface water there is being diverted by ditches and culverts, which, and I mentioned a preferential migration pathway. What I think also as a geologist is that the ballast rock, which is the base of the railroad track, is much more conductive of water than the fine sandy silt. And that may also be a channel or a preferential migration pathway for surface water. But these are areas that may, the DEQ may want some more data. We would go out and sample soil or groundwater in those areas.
So I guess my question was whether it all ends up in the cove or not.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Whether if it all goes into Clackamas Cove or not.
Oh, yes. So I haven't done a full topographic assessment, but I would say 80% of the water, surface water, goes to the ditches and to the cove. I would say maybe 20% or less might go to Abernathy Creek. So, and when they did redevelop the Amtrak station, they put in a bunch of swales to kind of allow surface water to infiltrate into the subsurface. So surface water management is critical, plus flooding is an issue, in the 100-year span of time.
Can you explain what the no further action letter means?
So a no further action letter is a legal document that the DEQ presents to a site with environmental conditions. It's very formatted, and they only present it when all of the environmental conditions that may potentially harm human health or the environment are assessed and/or remediated to the satisfaction that no one is going to get hurt by walking on the property, no one's going to be hurt by digging up the soil, and the birds and the plants are going to be okay too. So all of these assessments happen. They evaluate it. Once they're satisfied, they present a legal document called a no further action letter, and that pretty much provides protection from liability to the property owner.
And there is a no further action letter for this property.
There is a no further action letter for this property specifically for the Stimson lumber mill. But when I went onto the site, I reviewed thousands of pages of documents for this site. And what I found was that there's some data gaps that I would probably reinvestigate. One is being the ballast rock as a preferential migration pathway. Another is that when they were monitoring the landfill, they found that there was a spike in methane in the northwest corner of our site, and they attributed it to buried wood material. So I looked at aerial photographs and found that there are areas that they may have left buried materials, but they may they may have removed it. Also, the geotech investigation probably will determine whether that buried wood material is there or not.
Okay, so I don't know if we can go back to your map of the site?
Okay.
Excuse me. Maybe,
I got a bigger.
that's good right there. That's good. Okay, so when you say that the no further action letter only covers the Stimson site, it only covers
Yes.
with that footprint that is shown?
Exactly.
So down toward the, what would that be, east or north?
The north end.
And
So, yeah.
so it doesn't cover the whole site, it only covers that portion. So down there where it says former wood debris area, the no further action letter doesn't include that part of the site?
So as an environmental geologist, I evaluate all of the available data as best as I can. What they have done to get that no further action letter was to address the PCP area, which they capped with the station, meaning that nobody's going to be in contact with that contaminated soil, which is on the Amtrak station. And they removed the petroleum contaminated soil, which is also on the Amtrak station. And so these are the two serious issues that were on the Stimson lumber mill. They did not think that leaving wood on the ground was an issue. So they never addressed it. So that no further action letter does not incorporate a discussion about the wood debris material. The reason I bring up the wood debris material is because the landfill site made a comment that they think that some of the methane that's being blamed on the landfill may be coming from the wood debris on our site. So to kind of stop them from further discussing it, either yes or no, is to investigate it and to see if there is wood. So I'm drawing information from two different consultants and documents. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mayor McGriff?
Yes, I thought your report was very thorough, and I
Thanks.
appreciate all the information. The thing that I would say to my colleagues here is that just because there's been a letter of no further action, that doesn't mean there is no further action. There is. Obviously, he's pointed out the former woody debris area. So my professional experience with doing these EAs always leads to step 2, which is doing an EA2. So you do another environmental assessment, because I've purchased properties in the past where we had that letter and we did our own investigation, come to find out, ta-da, not totally as cleaned up as they tell you it is. and then you always end up finding something else. Obviously, we know that this area is fraught with a lot of unknowns, although we know a lot. So I think in terms of what we've got from our recommendations from our staff, that I would recommend that we accept this report and then move forward with a level 2 EA, just so we have a better understanding of what's going on, and that would be the next steps in the direction to staff. And then once we have those, we can turn those over to a quote-unquote prospective purchaser and let them make their own decision about the material that they are looking at and reading. But my experience with contaminated sites is that they're never really truly 100% cleaned up. There's always something, and that's not a bad thing. Because again, as you said, they capped the area where the PCP was. So as long as that's not disturbed, and this use is pretty benign in terms of what's happening there. I mean, they're not proposing, they didn't build anything, they brought in a portable, everything is sitting, so they're not really disturbing the soil or doing anything, digging stuff up or putting in things. So this probably, in the interim, has been an ideal site for what we've got without everything being there. And we know, again, from, you grew up here, but Stimson covered a much larger area than what's this little remainder. So that's really, in, my reading of this and everything else, there's more.
Madam McGriff, if I could add some more information. You're absolutely correct. There's always some level of uncertainty, and there's always a possibility of additional environmental issues. That being said, as part of this assessment is that there are engineering controls like vapor barriers, drainage designs. There's institutional controls that says you'll never have residential occupants. You
Right.
can only have occupational occupants. So there are engineering and institutional controls that could move this development forward with a nominal amount of additional investigation. In addition, we have luck on our side, meaning that there's other neighbors who have dealt with exactly the same issues that we're dealing with here and have addressed it exactly with engineering controls, meaning a vapor barrier, draining water away from areas of contamination, and institutional controls or covenants that protect, the use, that define the use of the property. That being said, I don't really think there's a lot of work left. I think there's a little bit to satisfy DEQ. And once DEQ gives a property an NFA, they try as hard as possible to not do more, So that being said, as far as the buried wood debris material goes, I think the geotech investigation will find it, whether there is wood or not. As far as the ballast rock, I think it's, 10, 20 soil samples, so I think it's pretty ready for development, and it's the gateway to Oregon City,
I think the other thing that you bring up is that I find it a little bit amusing that the work on the former Rossman's landfill says, oh, there might be contamination coming over from this site over to here.
Yeah.
They don't know exactly what's buried in there.
Yeah.
I will say that my experience has been that the original operator of the landfill did not keep very good records.
Right.
And so it was anything goes. So I find that a little interesting that, they're saying that because I
Yes.
think any person using logic would say, well, maybe, but how much are you how much is this site generating? Because they've only done, some small core samples over the years. And like I said, we don't know exactly what's in there. Could, soup to nuts.
Yes, absolutely, and you're absolutely correct. We have no idea what's in there. However, what they have on their side for the landfill is they do have a leachate remediation system. They have a soil gas remediation, which are both, I think, active, and they are actively monitoring these issues. And in so doing so, they have a permit from DEQ. Again, DEQ has bought off on all of the work that has been done at the landfill, and the DEQ is satisfied that the landfill is not an imminent hazard to the cove or to the down gradient properties. So that being said, we don't know, but there are engineering controls in place already active. So
I just take those reports from DEQ, I read them, and I take them with a little bit of a grain of salt.
yes, absolutely. And that's why I think that, as part of my recommendation was engineering controls. Like, I think there's too many unknowns to kind of be loosey-goosey, and I think going conservative and installing vapor barriers, installing proper drainage designs that mitigate, any type of, they're called pathways to receptors. So we want to make sure that these gases and this contamination never touches, our friends and family. So,
Yeah. Perfect, thank you so much.
thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Park? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So commissioners, any comments, suggestions?
Like I said, if there aren't any, I'd like to move that we,
Well,
go ahead.
I do. So
You
here's my question. It needs more investigation. We're going to talk next about the geotech.
Yeah,
So that's one step.
yes.
So I guess my question is, and probably need to rely on Mr. Graham's expertise on this. Who should be doing the phase two? Is this, with this information and the geotech report, is that enough information where we could go out and ask for an RFP? Or do we need to do that in order to attract interest in the property? And I guess what I'm trying to avoid is, either we put something out there and everybody's afraid to touch it, or we go to the expense and a developer is going to come in and do the same thing over again, so we've essentially wasted our money.
Not
And that
always.
is a really long, convoluted question, but you understand what I'm trying to get at?
Yes, I do. And to answer your question, the developer should do that. Because because as Jen Park has just said,
Can you
Just
speak up? I'm sorry.
just move the mic closer.
oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, the developer should do that. And as Jen Park had mentioned, it's basically ready for development. A lot's been done already in all these different areas. So, for phase two, the developer should do it, and it's a lot of work has been done, so therefore the plate is well set. So when they get all of this information that you have before you, it gives them some comfort that a lot of work has been done, and there are some controls all over the other in the other parcels.
I guess I would just add, the next item we're gonna talk about is the geotech drilling, right? From that is gonna come some data. Mr. Park did talk about kind of the offsite drainage, probably some minor work necessary for some water testing, soil testing. I guess I'd love to have the option to have an expert involved reviewing whatever happens with our geotech review, because I don't know what that's going to say, right? And maybe there is some water sampling that we kind of wrap this thing up, right? And then, and then we make that decision. Do we leave it to the developer to negotiate for a no further action or a prospective purchaser agreement with the Department of Environmental Quality, or do we take that step? I think no matter what we do, right, a potential buyer is going to do their due diligence with their own expert. I think we have an immense amount of effort has gone into answering these unknowns, which I would hope would make their review much easier, quicker, and less expensive than if they were doing this from scratch, if that makes sense. So I think this investment does bring value, even, for a private developer to understand what's happening on the site, and for us to be able to speak with confidence to whatever they bring back, because we'll have our data that I believe is very good. I feel like we're close, and I would maybe like a little bit of ability to just kind of wrap this thing up to a point where I've got the help to get through the geotech work, see what happens when they do the drilling and the soil samples that they're going to take, so we know. And then, like I said, it seemed like the last kind of outstanding issue was the potential water migration down by the railroad, and then potentially going to the Cove or Abernethy or percolating. Maybe it's authorize me to have that conversation with Mr. Park, get an idea of what that costs. If it's relatively minor, it seems like it would be a nice way to wrap this up. At that point, we've kind of exhausted everything we think we should look at based on what we know right now.
I think the geotech is a reasonable and responsible next step.
Okay, do we need any action on this
Yes.
item?
Yeah.
What do we need?
It says review and accept the final report from Environmental Works and direct staff to undertake the next steps.
Okay.
And I would so move.
Second.
Move a second and call for the vote, please.
Just a second. Commissioner Denise McGriff,
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Doug Neely,
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Marl,
Aye.
Vice Chair Sean Cross,
Yes.
and Chair Mike Mitchell.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
On to the next item, number 3, personal service agreement with NB5 for 1795/99 Washington Street Geotech site analysis.
Thank you. So tonight before you is a personal service agreement to authorize the execution of the personal service agreement with PSA, also known as NV5. So this is the geotechnical site analysis and report preparation for 1795 Washington Street, the Stimson property, in the amount of $31,150. The city followed state procurement standards and received proposals, was sent out to 4 geotechnical consultants on December 11th. 4 proposals were submitted and reviewed by staff. NV5 came in as the low bidder. Included in this packet is the proposed scope of work for the property, focusing on some of what we've been talking about, identification of any subsurface contaminants, existing conditions that exist on the site. Specifically, part of this is that discussion of, how much of this woody debris material exists on the site, to what depth does it exist, are all things that we expect to be results of this study. I'd be happy to answer any questions. We are recommending approval of the purchase or the personal service agreement with NV5 or the work.
Thank you. Any comments or any questions for staff?
Pretty clear.
I'll move that we approve the personal services agreement and authorize the city manager to execute the personal service agreement with Geotech Inc.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Denise McGriff,
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Doug Neely,
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Marl,
Aye.
Vice Chair Sean Cross,
Yes.
and Chair Mike Mitchell.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Our next 2 items, I think we can lump together. They're minutes of the approval of minutes of the August 16th, 2023 and September 12th, 2023 Urban Renewal Commission meetings. Are there any corrections or addition to the minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Call the vote, please.
Commissioner Denise McGriff,
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Doug Neely,
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Marl,
Aye.
Vice Chair Sean Cross,
Yes.
and Chair Mike Mitchell.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. I meant to say one thing back on the previous item that I forgot. So do you need any action from us? If you're going to informally talk to Mr. Park about what would be involved regarding the surface water drainage questions. Do you need any motion from this group to undertake that, or can you?
I think I'm comfortable. I think we talked about that. And, you know, for me, it's, you know, I want to get a understanding of, you know, what work, you know, based on what we just approved with NV5, right? What additional work or soil sample would be necessary, and try to get an estimate on what that would cost. I forget the exact, I think it was 15,000. The Urban Renewal Commission has authorized me to sign for. I have to go back and check. I think it was that. If not, I will bring it back to the Urban Renewal Commission to have a discussion about.
Okay, great. That
That
sounds good.
seems reasonable to everybody?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, seeing head nods. Okay, communications.
I think the only communication, I just wanted to provide an update concerning the Cove. So we've had some discussions about looking at a monitoring plan for Clackamas Cove. I believe I've provided an update before that we've been working with, we met with Brown and Caldwell, who is our on-call for the city stormwater management consultant. They do a lot of our work for our MPDS permit, our stormwater design standards. So they helped us, as well as we had a great meeting with Water Environmental Services and their staff about the opportunities. Obviously, they do not only sanitary sewer, but for a portion of the district, they do stormwater monitoring, testing and whatnot. So they do bring an expertise to the conversation, and as well as a proximity to the Cove. So they did assist us when we met with Brown and Caldwell in reviewing the scope of work for a monitoring program of the Cove. So we will anticipate bringing that back in January for the Urban Renewal Commission to have a look at the scope of work and what we think we heard in terms of a testing monitoring program that comes with recommendations for mediation and mitigation, and then a second phase and a third phase. We kind of broke this out into sections for the work to happen, because really, you know, part of this we were realizing is we do not have a very good, or any, for that matter, existing baseline condition. So we really don't have anything to compare to. So really this is trying to see, you know, what happens with water quality in March and April versus what's happening in July, August, September, and trying to see, and this is going to be an ongoing thing, I would imagine, but I think that from that we are going to start to get a better idea of, you know, what is potentially causing these blue-green algae blooms, the handful of times that they've occurred over the last couple of years in the Cove. So I just want to give you an update on where we're at with that. And I do really appreciate the help of Public Works, Brown and Caldwell, Water Environmental Services staff. They've been great to work with in discussing the options for this project.
Okay.
I just have a question for Mr.
Yes.
Gonkel. Yes, I'm just saying, you know, think back to 1996 when we had the flood. I know that there was a great deal of consternation by DEQ because it showed up in the paper that they were checking the Cove and other areas for contamination, because obviously when it flooded, everything kind of just washed out that way. Mm-hmm. And I believe that year we did have a major problem with blue-green algae in the Cove, but they attributed that to the flood, and everything was coming from everywhere. Including the river itself, because stuff was, you know, flying down the river and coming from the Clackamas. But I think, again, those were some external circumstances that we're not going to have the 96 flood, hopefully, all the time to cause that kind of a problem. So this is some other problem that's happening without those conditions. I know that when, I think one of the people we had here, Richard Craven, was mentioning that when we had a little bit of high water, that there was sort of a cause and effect that happened. So, just juicy fun facts.
Yep, I think that's definitely why we need to do this, right? To try to see if we can identify changes, whether they're kind of natural from water flow or existing within the soil sediment that's there. I don't think we really know what's the trigger here that's causing this. That's all that I have.
Okay. Unless I'm off on my timing, I believe this is Commissioner Cross's last meeting with us. can tell from that we don't want you to leave. Your arm is probably sore from all of us twisting you at different times to stay. But on behalf of the group and anybody who else wants to chime in, feel free. But thank you for everything you've done. We appreciate your contributions and your professional manner of operating on the Urban Renewal Commission. I wish we could get you to stay. So thank you.
I agree.
Yeah, I think your expertise, we're going to have a little hard of a time to match that. And I certainly appreciate being able to bounce things off of you because of your experience and, you know, what you do in your day job. So, you know, if you see a phone call coming in from me, answer, please. I might have an off-the-record question for, hey, Sean, what about this? But thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm sorry that you're not going to continue. I certainly appreciated your contributions.
Okay. With that,
You
we're
can
adjourned.
tackle them before the meeting's
Yeah,
over.
well, I got him in the hall over
Oh,
here last time.
good for you.
It didn't do me any